you said that, there's an idea that men and women are equal, which you're implying that they're not.
They're different. There's a difference
That's
between
fair.
equality
Different
and
is
difference.
fair. Difference is fair.
Anybody
Because,
watching this right now knows that men and women are we look completely different, right?
yeah,
Men
we
and
are
women
different.
look completely different. We have different skill sets. Men
Totally.
have men have like a third more upper body strength than women have, right? There's a reason why
Pick the
men go
heavy
to
things up.
war. Yeah, there's a reason why men go to war. There's a reason why when a transgender male competes in a female sport, he destroys and dominates all women, right? Like men and
Exactly.
women are
It's
different.
not fair.
But fairness, now, that's interesting that you brought that up. Now, fairness is usually, I find anyway, when with most people, it's like, well, that's not fair. And it's like, no, men and women are still different. And
Yeah.
that's okay. It doesn't have to be fair. Like fairness in a relationship, I think is a contributor or a catalyst to the failure of that relationship because nothing in life is fair. But I mean, if life was fair, like in your racing career, everybody would be on the podium. But no, there's 1 through 20 on the
Sure.
grid, right? That's how it works. That's how the competition ends at the finish line. But today, fairness is basically, it's infused in the fabric of society, even in elementary schools, because all children are given a participation trophy. There's no first place anymore in many sports.
I mean, I agree, and that's all bullshit. Like, there's a winner and there's a loser. You better learn the lesson when you're 6 instead of when you're 36 and you're, miserable and your life's going nowhere because you have no coping skills. Like,
Right.
learn that lesson young. But I think that it's just getting stuck on that equal word. Like, we're equal but different. Is
Yeah.
that what you could agree to?
I would agree with that. Men and women are equal in society, but we're different.
Exactly. And in a
Yeah.
relationship too, equal but different.
Yeah.
And that
I'm
really
I'm
it's
I'm
about
still I'm still going to be the one that's called upon to defend you in a relationship. When the bad guy breaks in the house in the middle of the night and the window smashes on the floor and you hear a bang, I'm not going to elbow you and say, "Okay, well you get this one because I got the last one." I'm the one that's going to jump out of bed and put myself in harm's way.
so
So
is
I don't think that they're fair inherently in the way that you're describing, like, men and women are equal and fair and all that sort of stuff. It's like, no, we're different and that's okay. I don't know
yeah.
that I want to apply equality or fairness to a relationship because it doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't expect a woman to stand close to the road. I wouldn't expect a
Sure.
woman to jump in front of somebody that was trying to rob us. Right.
Right. Right. But I know, but I think you're thinking that fair meaning like it's tit for tat. It's
Well,
all
you're
this
saying
at least
equal
equal.
is, yeah, it's like the whole equality thing. Like, I don't think that we're equal. I think that we're different. And that's
Yes,
okay.
but equal in importance.
Yes,
Or
absolutely.
do you think that men get a little bit ahead because they're the ones that ultimately will be the one that has to risk their life, let's say?
No, men are the disposable sex. Women are the protected sex. That's why when the ship goes down, it's always women and children first. I mean, it's always been that way. Men have always been disposable throughout society, and women have always been protected. If there is wars, and by the way, we live in one of the most peaceful times, in human history. But if there's a
Yeah.
war and two warring
Mhm.
tribes, get together, who gets killed off? All the men. And when the dominating side wins, any children or teens that weren't either brought into their armies or brought into slavery were killed off that were male. But who was protected? The women. And that's where the notion of war brides comes from, because I mean, like, even as far back as World War II, war brides were still very, very common. When the Germans invaded France and Normandy and Holland and, like, all the Dutch people sort of thing, all of the women that complied and entered the frame of the German soldiers were mistreated at the end of the war. They were brought out into town squares and their heads were shaved, and they were shamed for sleeping with the German soldiers and abandoning their families and their husbands and things like that. So women have always been protected and brought into the winner's sort of circle. And that's why women are very adaptive in society. That's why, see, women don't understand this, but men have a very hard time with breakups, right? We don't get it. It's like, we just want to get an answer, and if you get an answer, then you're deemed a stalker. But if a woman, gets dumped, then she wants endless meetings. There's emails, there's text messages. She needs closure, all this sort of thing. Like, women are generally a lot more adaptive, and they can move on very quicker from relationship to relationship. And I think that's because of the war bride dynamic
Really?
where throughout history they've been conditioned
Hmm.
to adapt to new circumstances and environments, because if they didn't, they would die.
I don't agree with that.
It's true though.
I think it's because women face their feelings and emotions because they can't help it. It's part of our nature. And that men traditionally in a breakup usually go out and start dating someone right away, or they start sleeping with other people, they distract themselves. And women go through the emotions and they mourn and they cry and they're miserable, and then they work through it, where a man's is sort of deferred or delayed or pushed down, and that never works either. What about the perspective of vulnerability? Like there's such a movement in culture for men to get more vulnerable.
No,
I'm
I
gonna
don't.
guess you think that's some bullshit right there.
Yeah, men have been told to be more vulnerable, haven't they? How does it sit with you and your girlfriends though when a guy, turns into a total pussy?
I think there's definitely a fine line. There's a fine line between a pussy and a man that owns his feelings.
Yeah, I think what you just defined is that women like men that just get it. That like you don't want to tell guys how to solve that problem. You don't want to solve the problems for, like, women aren't generally kingmakers. They want to be with a king. You know what I mean? Like they want to be with a guy that's got it figured out. So when it comes to that feeling emotions or being vulnerable, your dog dies, be emotional. You lose your parents, fine, be emotional. It's required. You have to grieve through that part. Brenda from accounting was mean to you today. You don't want to hear about it.
I mean, personally, for my friends, if Brenda at accounting was mean to one of my girlfriends, I'd be like, fucking get over it.
But most women would want to have a big conversation about that. Let's get together. We'll pour some wine. Let's bust out the cheese. Get the charcuterie board going. Let's talk about Brenda and what a bitch she is, sort of thing.
What about just being heard?
Be heard. Absolutely. But I mean, the point that we're making about this concept is that women want men to just get it. And it's okay to be vulnerable in certain circumstances. It's okay to cry in certain circumstances that are warranted. But most men get emotional and get vulnerable and cry over the littlest things, which turn women off. Men don't understand this, that they want women want men that just get it, that are competent, that can solve problems, that can get things done, that can make it rain. They don't want to deal with a crybaby. One of the things you hear a lot of women say, and after I got divorced, I was dating a lot of divorced women as well, because I was looking at women around my same age group. And one of the questions I was always asking, so why'd you get divorced? So what happened? And I heard a lot of, oh, he was a big baby, he couldn't keep a job down, he was such a pussy, he wasn't a man, he was a big beta, big crybaby, like all of these things. And it's like, huh, that's interesting. But who was the guy that you married? Right? Like, did something change? And one of the things that happens to men in long-term relationships, I've noticed, is it's the betatization through 1,000 concessions. You see what I'm saying? So it starts with something like, hey, Rich, don't brush your teeth over there. You're going to get toothpaste on the carpet. Then it goes to make sure you put the white socks in the white hamper and the black socks in the black hamper. Then it goes
Come on,
to,
now that one just makes sense.
let's go vegan together. and then it continues to go concession after concession after concession.
Sure.
And the thing is that women, truthfully, they don't want men to make that many concessions. I understand the organized part. Like I understand, the laundry thing and all that sort of stuff. But as soon as you start stamping everything, yes, 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 and then you give her the stamp and she starts stamping everything, yes, her interest in that guy declines dramatically.
Agreed. Because here's the deal. He doesn't know who the fuck he is.
Right.
And
why
do
is
you
that?
like a girl to not know who the fuck she is either? Like,
I'm
don't
okay
you
with
want a
that.
girl
I
to
don't
contest
no.
with every now and again? Don't you want a little bit of a challenge? There's a perfect ratio of disagreements that need to happen in a relationship. And,
Is there?
I don't know what your thoughts are on Jordan Peterson, but he'll talk about that too. You don't want it easy. You want some level of challenge that is required for the relationship to be strong. You don't want to push over. Do you? Do
I
you want to push
disagree.
over, girl?
I don't want to come home to a disagreeable, bossy, bitchy woman. I want to come home to a loving woman.
Of course, a woman wants a loving man, but you can't tell me that you want a woman to make 1,000 concessions for you and that you'd still respect her.
I would.
For what?
Because she's not a man. Men and women are different. Remember that. We talked about that before. Men and women are different. Just because you want, see, I think the great lie that a lot of women have subscribed to when they're drunk on this Kool-Aid is they've been told to behave like men. Oh, you have to be somewhat disagreeable. You have like there's a certain ratio because Jordan Peterson
Definitely
said
not. That's
so.
not true. That's not true.
Is it?
It's not true. That's just called autonomy.
Is it though?
Yeah, absolutely. Because no two people are identical.
Right.
It's not like we could all just agree on everything. So just like you're going to know who you are and I would know who I was, like you're not always going to agree. So you can respectfully disagree, or you can have the discussion, change your mind perhaps. I actually, like, part of doing this interview is I was hoping you could change my mind on some things, because I think, because then I know I've learned something, because I'm open-minded. That's like the fascination, is that cool, teach me something new. But I know I have my convictions about myself. I know who I am, and I'm not just going to bend over in every single category so a man can feel good about himself, or so he cannot be challenged.
Yeah, but believe it or not, he's not trying to feel good about himself by not arguing with you. He just doesn't want to argue with you. He just wants peace in his life. Right now, I get that not many men are competent and deserve a peaceful life. I understand that. There's a lot of losers out there, a lot of weak men that get challenged by women for a reason. I get it. I fully understand that. But a guy like me, I don't want a confrontational woman in my life.
Right.
It's not needed, and it's unnecessary. And I'm competent enough, and I'm successful enough and influential enough that I don't need to put up with that sort of thing. So while I get that a lot of women have been told to be strong and independent and decisive, and to some degree, like, women I think today are more disagreeable than they ever have been in history.
Yeah, but I don't think that it's because we're being told to. It's because people are getting more confident with who they are.
Well, it's because women don't need men anymore.
Nobody needs anybody.
Don't they?
Do they? I don't know. That's a great question. If you like this clip and you want to hear the whole episode, click at the bottom of your screen.